It's time for PetSylvania with Dr. Bob Esplin. Dr. Bob guides you through the latest veterinary techniques and procedures to keep your pets in the best of health. PetSylvania is brought to you by Elanco, maker of Trifexis and Comfortis. With your ears up and tails wagging, here is Dr. Bob.
Good morning. It's Dr. Bob, PetSylvania, the 6/22/13 edition. Happy to be here. Dennis, thanks so much for the great lead-in. It helped bring me my audience, and I appreciate it. We have our standard sponsors, so I want to praise them a little bit. Esplin Medical, the maker of Comfy Scrubs. They're made of bamboo, cotton, and polyester. Because it's all 80% natural fiber, they breathe, they're comfortable. It's like wearing pajamas. So Comfy Scrubs sounds like a pretty good name to me. It would require a whole change in our logo and everything for us to do it, but that's what I'm going to call them. I'm going to call them Comfy Scrubs. Elanco, the maker of Trifexis, a truly unique product that is effective against internal parasites, heartworm, and fleas in a once-a-month pill. It is the next generation of parasite control, something that is recommended that you use for your dog year-round. So we strongly recommend Trifexis from Elanco. And the good news is Sylvania Vet has the best prices on Trifexis of anybody in the community. Our prices are so much less than the internet, it's really an embarrassment. If you're an internet purchaser, you've really made a mistake. Hills, the makers of Science Diet and Prescription Diet, scientifically formulated by a nutrition company, a company that's doing research on their existing products and new products and gaining knowledge in the basic science of proper feeding. These companies like Hills deserve support. They have a variety of great products. One of the great ones is this new metabolic diet, which is a game changer in the weight loss world. It actually counteracts the effects of hormones that are secreted by body fat that shut down the genes that are for fat burning, so that there's a self-preservation desire on the side of the fat molecules. And metabolic diet has figured out how to turn on the fat burning genes and help us get rid of that excessive fat on our pets. I'm going to tell you later about a dog that we measured this week. It's pretty amazing. And then Sylvania Veterinary Hospital, my office. I'm always happy to brag about us, but we're located at 4801 North Holland, Sylvania at Haroon, just down the street from Flower Hospital. Our website, www.sylvaniavet.com. We staff our building 24/7 with a technician. We have a dedicated doctor on call every night of the week. That's a major commitment for a doctor to do that. Many students coming out of vet school don't want to have anything to do with being on call and providing 24/7 emergency care. We have an exceptional staff, and I'm so proud of all of them. And they've gotten us through a tough time when we've been short-staffed because of my medical problems. So thanks, guys, for helping us. I'm back and doing more and more on a weekly basis. I had a question, and on the surface, it seems like a real simple answer. But Julie indicated, even though we haven't had a dog up to now, we've enjoyed listening to PetSylvania. Now my 10-year-old and 8-year-old sons have worn us down, and we plan to get a puppy soon. That we have a couple of summer months to acclimate. On the surface, that's a really great idea, Julie. To do that, that first 2 months, there'll always be somebody there, and it should really speed along your housebreaking. The next paragraph, we're thinking of getting a dachshund. Puppy has had its first shots. We don't know what that means. Are interested to know what the first year expenses for the addition to the household will cost us for proper vet care. You know, on the surface, Julie, that sounds like it ought to be a real simple answer, but it's not, because different veterinary practices approach puppy shots in a different way, and depending on the age that you get the puppy, the time when that vaccine that the puppy had received was given, that affects it. How often are stool checks done on the puppy? How much time does the veterinarian spend with you and the family? If this is your first dog, you're going to have a ton of questions. Are you going to feel rushed? So those are all really tough questions. on a rough basis, where do we stop the expense thing as well? Do we stop at the end of puppy series, which is should be no later than 4 months? Then you're gonna have committed probably $350, maybe a little bit more, maybe a little less, depending on when that puppy received that first vaccine. Again, breeders sometimes do their own shots, and I have very little confidence in that, but we don't want to piggyback another vaccine if it's just been done recently. But what did they give and what manufacturer did they give? Your best bet is to come in and visit, take a tour, discuss finances as to those first visits. Do we factor in the cost of heartworm preventive, flea control, tick control, food? What do we, where do we stop discussing that? One of the ways to kind of help stabilize your expenses, particularly after you get through the first year, is to get pet health insurance. So that's something that we could talk with you about as well. So I hope you can come in, take a tour, kind of do a little groundwork. We can sit and spend some time talking with you about dachshunds and whether it's a standard dachshund or a miniature dachshund, short-haired, long-haired. What are some of the issues that you have to know about dachshunds going in, so that it's that you're going to have it's going to be a good match. So hope to see you. You can call us 419-885-4421 and schedule that first visit. We'll spend about a half an hour on the first puppy visit when you come in. That's another factor. A lot of practices just hand you a bunch of handouts and they send you out the door and it's wham bam, thank you man with the injections. You got to be comfortable that you know that you're going to be able to talk and get answers to all of your questions. And one of my goals and I love puppy visits. They're among my favorite things that I do on a daily basis, is that I always try to be so thorough that there are no questions left, and that I always get a smile when I say, well, do you have any questions? And the answer is, happened just the other day, no, you've answered everything. So I feel like I've really been thorough. So you want a veterinarian that's going to be thorough. We saw a dog this week that had come in from another practice to have us do a second opinion on its skin, and the other practice had done the right things. It had done a skin scraping and it had done some tape cytology to make sure that there wasn't any infection present. What they did is that they said this is a hormone problem and there's nothing we can do about it. Well, the problem is that by not giving a name to the diagnosis, it left a lot of uncertainty in the client's mind, and that practice wasn't wrong, but the reality is that what they should have done is looked at the breed of dog, which was a boxer, and they should have then been able to call it seasonal pattern hair loss or seasonal flank alopecia. Alopecia is a fancy name for hair loss. So Michael Jordan has a serious case of alopecia, if you will. It's seen in boxers, English bulldogs, Airedales, and Schnauzers most commonly, and it's along the sides. That's the flank of the dog. There are spots of thin hair or hair loss that are dark in color usually, and it can come and fluctuate. So it'll go away for a while, and then the next year it'll come back, and that's why they calls it seasonal. I like to call it seasonal pattern baldness. Propecia is not going to do that any good. There is really no treatment for it other than cosmetically. There really is no reason to want to treat it. A few times we have tried using some melatonin. We have a melatonin implant that we've used. It's cleared up. All right. Is it cleared up because the season ended and the hair grew back, or did the melatonin really help it? We don't know. The other veterinarian also suggested that they give vitamin D. Well, the dose of vitamin D that was recommended was a little high. That has never been recommended in any of the research that I've done, and you can run into vitamin D toxicity because it is one of the fat-soluble vitamins. It's, believe it or not, time for a break. Recently, the Blade had an article on psychics and how they're being incorporated in the lives of people with their pets. There's certainly a large number of us that are skeptical about all this paranormal kind of parapsychology types of arts that exist out there, and certainly psychics are among them. And as a science-oriented guy, show me the science is when we're sitting down talking about something, it's really hard to accept. One thing that I would say, and then I'm going to tell you a story that makes being a skeptic kind of hard. The behavioral experts, even those that might be somewhat supportive of the use of a psychic in your relationship with your pet, is that they don't. And most of the good quality psychics will say, look, I don't want to be involved in a case that is involved medicine and an ill animal and trying to do anything with treatment and with behavioral problems. That's overstepping the bounds of somebody of that situation. Well, I'm going to give you this quick story about a woman that was used to live in this area and now lives in Florida, and her name's Diane, and she has proven to us that she somehow can get into and understand what animals are thinking and where they're going. And we had a situation where a cat went home with their family, having had an abscess treated, and it was on oral antibiotics for a few days after the treatment. And I got a call that night from the owner saying the cat's disappeared. What's going to happen with them if I can't get the medication in? And I said, well, but by the morning the cat will show up and we should be okay with if we miss just one dose. Next morning we get a call, the cat hasn't shown up yet, and we've looked everywhere. So they called Diane, and she was in Florida. This was in Sylvania. And Diane says, the cat is near a wall under something green. They're going out, they're looking all over again. We're in a wall in something green. They had a green car, so they got up underneath and looked underneath the car. No cat. Later in the day, they called her back, and she says, I'm still seeing the cat near a wall, and it's under green, and there's yellow flowers. And so they're looking around, and they go into a closet, a little-used closet, and there's a Tupperware, one of these big Tupperware tubs with a green lid. And they said, ha-ha! Open up the thing. The cat's not there. But underneath the Tupperware container was a trapdoor into the crawl space. Down into the crawl space, there's the cat on the far wall, sitting against the wall. The owner got underneath, crawled down, got the cat, carried it up. As he climbed up out of the hole and was looking up, on the top shelf in this closet were some yellow silk daffodils. So when I heard that story, my comment was, it's really hard to be a skeptic. I don't know how it happened, but that's a true story as it exists. So there must be some substance to what some of these people with really tuned in psyches are able to do. It's not uncommon in an animal for us to hear a heart murmur, and most of the time the heart murmur we hear is in an older dog. So first off, what's a heart murmur? A heart murmur is only an abnormal sound in the heart. It doesn't necessarily mean that they're sick or in danger or anything like that at that immediate point in time, but it does mean that one of the four valves that's in the heart, to make you think back to your biology days, with two upper chambers called auricles and two lower chambers called ventricles. There are valves between those two upper and lower chambers, and there are valves where the vessels that come back into the upper chambers come in, so that there isn't a backflow of blood when the heart contracts. So when the upper portion of the heart contracts, those upper valves close and the lower valves open, and then when the ventricles contract, the valves close, and then the blood gets pushed out into the circulation or into the heart. So a murmur says that one of those valves is leaking a little bit, and there's a big regurgitation of blood against the flow, and it's that noise that we're hearing when we hear a heart murmur. Dogs and cats generally don't get heart attacks, so we don't have to worry about that. So when we hear a heart murmur, we want to listen and document it, and then we want to look at heart size, because as a heart murmur progresses, the heart may enlarge, and you can ultimately end up with fluid accumulating in the chest, and you have congestive heart failure. there are times when we think a dog with a heart murmur or a cat with a heart murmur should go see a specialist. And that's particularly true in the young animals where these may be congenital and that there can be something surgically done to correct that murmur, or that we might have a prognosis of, a shortened lifespan because of that. Echocardiograms was what we would be sending you to a specialist for, and we must have a done by a specialist. Echocardiograms in dogs and cats are very difficult to do, very difficult to interpret, and it takes years and years and years of training for a cardiologist to become highly qualified. So there is nobody locally at this point that can do that. If your dog does develop or cat does develop congestive heart failure, they'll cough. They may have reduced exercise tolerance. There may be some swelling of the legs and the abdomen. And then there are treatments that we can prescribe. And the four most commonly used medicines are a diuretic called Lasix, what's called an ACE inhibitor called enalapril or benazepril, a cardiac strengthening, muscle strengthening product called pimobendan, and another diuretic called spironolactone. And they're kind of used in that order. We start with the diuretic and the ACE inhibitor, add pimobendan when need be, and then add spironolactone at the end. It's really difficult as a consumer for you to compare foods, because in great part, and we just covered this at our seminar last Thursday, reading bags, even if you came to the seminar and now you try to read bags, it's very difficult because they don't list precise ingredients when they say what it is, or they don't give you an exact amount. There's a range. That range can certainly affect it. They don't talk about the calorie density of the food and how it affects that. It's even difficult to find out how many calories are in a cup. They don't talk about the different types of fiber and the effect that the amount of fiber might have in there. They do talk about the moisture, but it is usually not greater than, but it doesn't tell you how much it really is. So there's no precision in the ability to read from bag to bag, manufacturer to manufacturer. When you compare dry food to canned food, now it's difficult because we're not looking at it on an as-fed basis, where you are from the perspective of you're feeding the can straight away, but there's a lot of moisture in there. So you want to compare it on a dry matter basis. And by comparing it on a dry matter basis, what you have to do is take all the ingredients that are in the can that are listed there, and you roughly triple those. And that's going to be fairly close to the dry matter equivalent to dry food. Now you are in a position to compare it a little bit better, and so that becomes a real difficult way to evaluate that. A resource for you, is to go to the company's website and see how helpful they are. And they should have more explanatory information on their website than they can put on the bag as to what are those ingredients that are there. Just a quick thought for you here about puppies. Sometimes they play tug-of-war rough, they play ball reel rough, if they roughhouse with each other pretty hard, and they can break a tooth, and they break on a baby tooth. And what do you do about that? Well, they're going to be painful, and it's a pathway to infection. So that baby tooth needs to be closed up. And so what you do is, as quickly as you can, you get in and you do what's known as a vital pulpotomy. You remove the root, and then you put a sealant on that tooth, and then it just remains there until the adult teeth start to push through. And adult teeth start to erupt at about 4 months of age in a dog. They erupt at 3 months of age in a cat, and they're all all the adult teeth are in by the time they're 6 months old. If there's a baby tooth that's been left and hasn't pushed out when it's supposed to, if it's not gone by 6 months, it needs to be extracted. And on the other side, you really don't want to extract that broken baby tooth, because you may damage the tooth that's developing, that adult tooth that's developing, and you may malform it, or it may not properly erupt. It's time to go take a break, and we'll be back on the other side. It's always important to remind you that every dog and every cat should be on monthly heartworm preventive. Heartworm, for those of you that don't know, is a mosquito-transmitted disease. And when you give that monthly medicine, it works backwards. When you give it to them in June, you're actually protecting for what went on and what exposure occurred in May. And so it is recommended that you do heartworm preventive year-round, even in Northwest Ohio, even in the dead of winter. It's highly critical that you don't stop early, because most people, if they do stop, are stopping in November. Well, we can have an awful lot of mosquitoes in October. So we think it's just best for you to give it year-round, and that way you're going to have better compliance. We're not going to have any worries. And there are some worries right now about some of the heartworm preventive out there and some new strains of heartworm that exist that could very well show some resistance if we're not precise and we aren't consistent in giving that medication. So as we wrap up the show, and believe it or not, this is the end of the very first year. This is our 52nd show. I have had a really great time. I'm hoping that the next year will bring more questions, because I really appreciate it when we get the questions and we can personalize these visits for you and these questions so that it's stuff that you really want to hear about. I want to thank Esplin Medical, the makers of Comfy Scrubs, 55% bamboo, 25% cotton, and 20% polyester. It's like wearing pajamas. Naturally antimicrobial, wash and dry with less energy, less soap, less heat. You may go to esplinmedical.com, or Sylvania Vet carries the full line of Esplin Medical scrubs, and you can stop in, take a look at them, feel them, and hopefully buy several sets. Hills, the makers of high-quality, scientifically formulated, scientifically researched foods in the Science Diet line of foods, a full line of foods that fit every niche, that whatever you care to feed, and the Prescription Diet line, where there is just great products to help an animal with a specific disease process. The newest one being obesity, and I noticed today on the news that the AVMA is recommending that obesity be classified as a disease, and so they're recognizing what we've recognized at our office a lot of times. It is a problem of a serious nature in our pets, as it is in dogs. We had a dog put on metabolic diet this week that should have weighed 19 pounds, and when we calculated